$1 million plane is assigned to carry a $2 billion cargo. 2:15 a.m., August 6th. For 12 men, Colonel Tibbets, the crew of the Enola Gay, and the Navy captain who will arm the bomb, William Parsons. It will take the bomb 43 seconds to reach Hiroshima. The Enola Gay strains to escape the fury she has unleashed. At 0, -15 seconds, a warning tone sounds in the plane. In 10 seconds, the world will shake.
Before the Nazis did.
I love that. How'd that work? How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like, it's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about like spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening?
Okay, actually, what would be childish is to assume that there are no other players in the world, for example, trying to develop nuclear weapons. The fact is the Nazis were trying to develop nuclear weapons. There was, in fact, a nuclear arms race that was happening at the time. Not only that, as it turns out, the Soviet Union then developed nuclear weapons. And it is mutually assured destruction and nuclear deterrence that has kept the world largely from sinking into another World War III-like mass casualty morass because of the horror of dropping the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the first place. By the way, when he says things like, how exactly would you justify, why are we talking about how many lives it would save? It's just wrong to drop the bomb. Well, no, actually, if you end up saving more lives than are cost by the dropping of the atomic bomb, then it is morally justified to drop the atomic bomb. And that happens to be the reality of the situation. Evan Thomas wrote in the Washington Post fairly recently, the commanders of the Japanese armed forces were fanatics. On August 9th, after Washington dropped the second bomb on Nagasaki, Japan's war minister, General Korichika Anami, asked his fellow members of the Supreme War Council, quote, would not it be wondrous for the whole nation to be destroyed like a beautiful flower? The rulers were fatalistic about taking the rest of the nation with them. The 1 million will die for the emperor was a common headline in the state-controlled press. Even after Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been destroyed, and after the Russians had even invaded Japanese-occupied Manchuria, 6 members of the Supreme War Council deadlocked 3-3 on whether to surrender. After the dropping of the second bomb, when Emperor Hirohito decided that he wanted to end the debate and surrender, he had to run away from members of his own military who were threatening to kidnap him and who were trying to find the recording of him surrendering before it could be broadcast on radio to destroy the recording. So yes, it turns out that it was necessary. By the way, if we had not dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the alternative was either an amphibious assault that would have cost probably 1 million American lives, or more likely a giant blockade of the island of Japan, including the mass starvation of the civilian population, which would have resulted in millions of dead Japanese.
He says people who deny the moon landing or suggest America's evil for the use of atomic weapons against Imperial Japan, or who say that George Bush was behind 9/11, actually hate this country. Jeremy is in the entire premise of being a critical thinker to question things. Some of the best podcasters and influencers are those who question what no one else is questioning. Being anti-establishment is to question the establishment's motive. By the way, he responds to that. Rob, if you want to put the other one, then he puts, it is not critical thinking to say that America never landed on the moon or that George Bush orchestrated the 9/11 attacks. It is a rejection of critical thinking. And then I had one last response to him, which was kind of an interesting one. You want to play this one, Rob? I understand your point. However, I'm not a Christian because I broke bread with Jesus. I've never met him face to face. That requires a level of faith I'm willing to risk taking. But it also takes faith to believe that we landed on the moon or someone's involvement in the 9/11 attacks. Having that level of unwavering faith in the U.S. government is what I'm not willing to risk. History does not favor blind faith in any government. That was my view.
I think of one of the famous speeches that President John F. Kennedy made when he talked about his own experience of being confronted with the possibility of a nuclear war being launched, and how he exercised the kind of leadership we should have in our country, where even as people in his own cabinet were encouraging him to take military action that he knew could spark a nuclear war with the Soviet Union, he instead chose to go behind their backs and conduct direct negotiations with the Soviet Union to walk back from the brink, because those two leaders recognized what Tucker was pointing out, that nuclear war leads to one place: the end of civilization, the destruction of living things, people, humanity on this planet. That is the real issue. And Ronald Reagan famously said that a nuclear war cannot be won and should never be waged. I'm paraphrasing it slightly, but that was his message. And so you've got a Democrat president and a Republican president, both who understood during that Cold War the very, very catastrophic consequences of a nuclear war being waged. So we look at where we are today. You've got the big strategic nuclear weapons that can take out entire cities or countries. You've got the tactical nuclear weapons that they say, well, they're smaller, they can be mobilized, they can be moved, and they can be used in a very targeted way, as though it's just another kind of mortar or bomb or missile that can be launched. The reality remains true, that was pointed out by JFK and Ronald Reagan, that our goal should be to make it so we are never at a point where the nuclear option is being considered. This is where diplomacy and leadership is so necessary, because under this administration, we are on the precipice of nuclear war. We are facing the prospect of a nuclear catastrophe, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because conditions have created such an environment, more so now than any time, certainly since the Cuban Missile Crisis.